And we're back. Senator Russ Feingold, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good morning.
Democrats took control of both houses of Congress in November of 2006, many of them pledging to end the war in Iraq. Is there any sense that Congress will be capable of ending the war?
Well, I think we will. This has been a slow, a very painful process. Sometimes I've been very pleased with the progress we've made, sometimes I'm not. But I'll tell you what happened this week. The majority of the United States Senate, including 4 Republicans, voted for a binding deadline to end the war by the early part of next year. And, you know, this is a proposal that I made a long time ago, which at the time people thought was sort of extreme. Now it is a mainstream view. We need to do more, but the unity that the Democrats are showing is causing more Republicans to come on board, which I think will lead to our being able to pass something in the not-too-distant future.
This fall?
I believe so. I'm hoping that can happen either in the Department of Defense authorization bill. I also think we have to look, as Senator Reid and I have talked about, at using the power of the purse, our ability to cut off the funding after the troops are safely redeployed as a way to actually enforce this kind of a binding deadline.
You used the word redeployed. John Burns, the bureau chief in Baghdad for the New York Times, who's lived there for some time, offered these words this week. It seems to me incontrovertible that the most likely outcome of American withdrawal anytime soon would be cataclysmic violence, and I find that to be widely agreed among Iraqis, including Iraqis who strongly oppose the invasion. Are you concerned that we leave behind violence, catastrophe, genocide?
Let's be clear what we have now. We now have cataclysmic violence. That's the status quo. It is possible that things would get worse if we left. It is possible that things would get better, but this is what I believe. Right now, we're holding the bag in Iraq. The other countries in the region, Iran, Syria, Jordan, Kuwait, they have an interest in stability in Iraq. Because if what you say will happen, it will cause great instability in countries and danger for them. The only way we get them engaged, the only way they put up the money and the resources to stabilize the situation is if we stop what they consider to be an occupation of Iraq. So I think the only way to avoid this situation getting worse is for us to orderly redeploy our troops and get these other countries engaged in what is in their own interest, which is a stable Iraq.
So if the country explodes, you would think you get the attention of people in the region?
I'm saying it would not necessarily get worse if we took the step of redeploying. I've heard a number of experts on the Foreign Relations Committee come in and say, in fact, it's just the opposite. It is our occupation, as it's perceived, that leads to so much of this free-floating violence throughout the country, not through any fault of ours, but it creates an environment that leads to more and more violence, more and more possible genocide, more and more tribal tension. Our getting out in an orderly way at least gives the opportunity for a new start in Iraq, and that's what it's time for us to do.
President Bush is determined to continue the war in Iraq. He's made that very, very clear. Is there anything the Democrats can do to get him to pay attention or to hold him accountable in their minds?
Well, I'm shocked by the administration and in particular the president's response to the November election. Usually when presidents are repudiated in elections, they say, well, maybe I ought to reassess. Instead, he did just the opposite. He did this surge which went contrary to the will of the American people. I think we need to do something serious in terms of accountability, and that's why I will be shortly introducing censure resolutions of the president and the administration. One on their getting us into the war in Iraq and their failure to adequately prepare our military and the misleading statements that have continued throughout the war in Iraq. And a second on this administration's outrageous attack on the rule of law, all the way from the illegal terrorist surveillance program to their attitude about torture, which we heard a little bit about today on this show. This administration has assaulted the Constitution. We need to have on the historical record some kind of indication that what has happened here is, in the words of Director McConnell, as you just quoted him, disastrous. Somehow we have to address that, and I think it's a good time to begin that process.
A censure resolution against the president?
Correct.
Anybody else?
Potentially, yes. I think when it comes to Iraq, obviously the Vice President Cheney, has been one of the worst actors in American history in this situation. There may be others. On the rule of law issue, on the attack on the Constitution, the current Attorney General has had one of the worst records of not being honest with the Judiciary Committee, of being intentionally misleading, and of not taking responsibility for everything from the disastrous consequences of the Patriot Act to the U.S. Attorney's debacle. So yes, potentially others, but of course, the president, the buck stops with the president. That is the number one.
Last year, you introduced a resolution to censure the president regarding the wiretapping of Americans within the U.S. under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. You got 3 other Democrats to join with you, just 4 Democrats. Isn't this a futile effort that will be described simply as politics?
Well, let's see what actually happened, Tim. What happened was, after I introduced the censure resolution, there was a lot of talk that it didn't mean anything. But what did the administration do? They stopped this TSP program. They brought it within the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. When they saw there was sentiment in this country, and almost every legal scholar saying that their idea that they could just make up their own laws was wrong, they brought it within the program. So I think it had a very positive impact. And it sets the stage for setting the historical record here, which is that this administration has done the greatest assault on our Constitution, perhaps in American history.
Do you think the American people will look on this saying, here go the Democrats just trying to create something sensational by censuring the president rather than trying to solve the problem of Iraq?
Well, there's a lot of sentiment in the country, that even the polls show it, for actually impeaching the president and the vice president. I think that they have committed impeachable offenses with regard to this terrorist surveillance program and making up their own program. What I am proposing is a moderate course, not tying up the Senate and the House with an impeachment trial, but simply passing resolutions that make sure that the historical record shows the way they have weakened our country militarily and against al-Qaeda, and weakened our country's fundamental document, the Constitution. I think that's a reasonable course and does not get in the way of our normal work. But the American people are outraged at the way they've been treated. They are outraged at the dishonesty that they have been subjected to. The American people, we deserve better than the way we've been treated, and somehow this has to be reflected.
Have you talked to the Senate Democratic leadership about this?
I have.
And will they be supportive?
We haven't drafted it yet. We're going to work cooperatively with whoever wants to work with me. I've talked to the majority leader. I've talked to Senator Leahy, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and we will be working together to see what kind of a thing we should come up with. But yes, I have talked to them.
Will it get any Republican support?
We'll find out. You know, I think this might be an opportunity for some Republicans who may be uncomfortable with taking steps such as impeachment to say, you know, somehow we have to reflect the fact that so much of this has gone wrong. Take, for example, Gordon Smith, who actually said on the floor of the Senate that this Iraq situation may have criminal elements. He actually said the word criminal. This is an opportunity for people to say, let's at least reflect on the record the fact that something terrible has happened here. This administration has weakened America in a way that is frightful at one of the most important times when we need to be strong. And we as a Congress have to reflect this tragedy.
What is the legal impact or effect of a censure?
It does not have legal impact. It is a resolution that has been done before, both with regard to members of Congress and also presidents, and it does not have legal consequences to my knowledge.
You've been introducing this when?
Shortly, in a few days.
Senator Russ Feingold, Democrat of Wisconsin, we thank you for coming here and sharing your views.
My pleasure.